1994, Treasure, a relatively unknown company at the time, created a platformer for the Sega Genesis. Dynamite Headdy, an insanely creative and difficult game, was overlooked by most gamers. Although Treasure had created the popular Gunstar Heroes in 1993, they still didn't have a big enough following for Headdy to gain much traction with the Genesis player base. Still, nearly 20 years after its release, the game subjectively remains to be one of the best platformers of all time. When I mentioned Dynamite Headdy was insanely creative, I wasn't joking. This is the most unique and imaginative game I have ever played. Full of strange bosses, a wide palette of colors, upbeat music, and appealing humor, Headdy offers new ideas at every point of the game. Dynamite Headdy is essentially a giant puppet show. Everything from the backgrounds to the characters are there to remind you that you're sitting in the audience, including the clapping at the end of each act. Curtains will drop to signify a new stage. Backgrounds are fake, and enemies will often burst through them, reminding you that this isn't your average world. Headdy himself, the game's protagonist, is a puppet with a detachable head. Throughout the game you'll find tons of different heads to switch out that each give their own unique abilities. There's actually a very wide variety of heads. Everything from a vacuum that sucks up all enemies on screen, to a one-time use bomb that blows up after a delay. Headdy can take quite a few hits himself, as shown by the spotlight on the upper left of the screen. Don't be fooled though, Dynamite Headdy is an extremely difficult game. Bosses often require memorization of patterns and many attempts to complete at later stages. But yet that doesn't seem to faze me, because the bosses are the best part of Dynamite Headdy. It's like the creators wrote random words down, mixed them up in a hat, and pulled them at random. They all have different mechanics and aren't pigeonholed into that standard hit them 3 times and win mechanic you usually see in newer platformers. Each stage of the game brings new ideas to the table, from running through levels at high speeds while escaping a giant dumpster mech, exploring Puppet Town, killing a giant dog in a crowded concert hall, exploring an underground cavern filled with lava while standing on rotating platforms, to attempting to escape the grasp of a robot arm while flying at high speeds through a backstage. Later on, you'll even be taking it to the skies to play through a shoot-'em-up level. I mean, what other game has a boss that's just a giant head on a stick that slowly cracks open and gets older and older as it loses health? Seriously, I'm not joking. The boss is titled Babyface and shows a baby head, followed by a teenager's, a grown man, and finally an old man. The game isn't all pretty colors and flowers though. Some parts were downright terrifying when I was younger. This is the level before the Gatekeeper. Looks peaceful, doesn't it? The boss at the end uses a gimmicky mechanic of a side character tossing a key into its back pouch. It all seems well when you defeat it, but then... Holy shit! This was terrifying as a kid. This boss was an absolute nightmare to defeat and takes a ton of tries. He's insanely fast and is relentless with his attacks. Plus, if you hit Heather, Headdy's love interest in the sequence, you take a large amount of damage, making the fight even more difficult. Think that's the worst the game can throw at you? Nope. Just look at this terrifying monstrosity in the next level. Holy shit! The worst part is that every time you flip the stage upside down, it turns red and chases you even faster. This guy is nightmare fuel. Throughout the game you're being chased by this weird bear named Trouble Bruin. Yeah, I didn't actually get the joke until later on in my life. He appears in tons of stages as the boss and will try and slow you down, but he's often a pushover. If you loved Rayman Origins and want an insanely creative platformer that will surprise you at every turn, or even if you're sick of the newer platformers relying on gimmicks instead of well-crafted stages and bosses, I implore anyone watching this to give it a try. It's been released on most major platforms in some shape or form. Dynamite Headdy is a joy to play through, and a game that's not to be missed by anyone who is a fan of Treasure.